Good morning and welcome to the Create Today podcast, where we help everybody create the life they want, no matter what kind of shit they've been through. And we've all been through a lot of shit. And so I want to welcome my good friend and amazing Renata Trebing. She's an intuitive nutrition coach and an amazing chef, recipe inventor of all healthy deliciousness, and author. She has not only one book, but two books. She is the author of Nourish Your Body. This is all recipes and amazing dinners and meals, and it's a whole 30-day plan. You could actually follow and eat every single thing in here, and you will feel amazing, and you will probably donate some pounds to the universe if that's what you want to do. You can see these are my ones that I make all of the time, that even my picky teenagers will eat, and they love them. And she just released her brand new book, Heal Your Body, Mind, and Spirit. And that is brilliant. I'm halfway through. I love it. It's really about transforming everything inside, not just diet, right? Your diet is everything you consume, right? So Renata, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you for that amazing introduction and for showing my books and just being the amazing human that you are. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. And I really want to share with our audience your journey and how this all got started, because folks, Renata was in the oil business not too long ago, and it's so amazing how it all happened. And so please start at the beginning. How did this all get started, from oil business to health and nutrition coach?
Yeah, well, I will say I was a little bit of a different kid. I was that kid that always loved to be in the kitchen. My family is a huge Indonesian family, so we love to gather around food. And I know that my sisters and my cousins would all be like outside playing or reading books or watching TV, but I would just love being in the kitchen. So the passion for cooking and food came from a really early age, but it was always something that I felt like was more of a hobby. It wasn't really something I thought that you could make your not only your career but your passion in life. And so really what happened was, like you said, I got started as a completions engineer in the oil and gas industry and met my husband, and we had our first child together, Olivia. And when Olivia was an infant, she actually suffered from a lot of gastrointestinal issues. So I could tell, even as a first time mom, that she had a lot of stomach pain. She had a lot of gas. She had a lot of uncomfortability. She would never sleep if you put her down because she needed that extra comfort. And then to make it like 1,000 times worse, I distinctly remember this moment of being at home, being that new mother, trying to figure out breastfeeding, trying to look after a whole human being, and then changing her diaper and seeing that there was blood in her stool. So I, of course, was like, oh my gosh, like something's really, really wrong. Called our pediatrician, who is incredible, and explained to him, these are all the things I'm noticing about her symptoms. And so he said, well, because you are breastfeeding her, it could be that she's actually allergic to something that you're consuming and she's getting it passed to her through the breast milk. So I was like, okay, well, what could it be? I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty healthy person. I feel like I'm eating well. And so what I didn't know at the time that he taught me was that dairy is actually one of the most common allergens for kids, for infants. And it's so funny because I was eating lots of dairy. I was having yogurt and cheese because I thought that that's what you're supposed to have to be healthy. And not to say that they're not necessarily healthy foods as well, but just to point out how this seemingly healthy food was obviously having an impact on my daughter. And I know that because I took out dairy from my diet, and it was almost like 180-degree shift. She was able to sleep through the night, which was amazing. I just remember waking up and being like, oh my gosh, it's 7 o'clock in the morning and she hasn't woken up. So it was like drastic. It was, she didn't have to be held all the time. She was having regular bowel movements, and just all these things showed me that the dairy was at that time inflaming her system. And what's so interesting to me is that, of course, as a mother, we're trying to do everything that we can to help our kids, to help them to be healthy. And little did I realize at the time, but I was feeling an impact from taking dairy out of my diet too. and I was feeling less bloated, less constipated, less fatigued. My energy was increasing. I just felt better. And so that really got me started going down this road of, okay, if I can't cook with dairy, what else can I make? Because I love baking. And so that got me into like vegan baking and trying lots of different recipes. And honestly, my husband was really the second factor in regards to how all of this got started, because he was suffering from lots of digestive issues. So he was also experiencing lots of issues with constipation for a different reason. And that was really because he wasn't having enough fiber rich foods. And so, like I live in Texas, I'm married to a Texan, which means that they basically think a meal should be meat and potatoes. So I really,
3 times a day at least.
Right, exactly. So basically, I had to figure out a way to get him to have more fiber rich plant foods like fruits and veggies that actually tasted good. So I ended up making him smoothies because it was the fastest way to get him to drink something that was filled with lots of nutrients and really amazing fiber to help his digestive system. So he started having that every day. His bowel movements improved, his digestion improved, his constipation improved rapidly. And then what was also amazing was my husband was actually on cholesterol medication at the time. And it was so funny. And I distinctly remember this because my dad and my husband were in the same room together and they were comparing cholesterol medications. And my dad is like 30 plus years older than my husband. So they're on the same cholesterol medication. But amazingly, like once he started to really fine tune his diet and have more fiber, he was able to come off of that cholesterol medication. So
Wow.
those were really, yeah, the two defining factors for me were Olivia and my husband, and me being able to see the huge impact that food can have on our bodies. It can literally heal us. And so that's where this love of nutrition really came from. And I just think it's such a powerful way to look after yourself, not just from the physical standpoint, but of course it relates to your mental, emotional and spiritual health as well.
So it started with a physical transformation. You can see your body transform by changing the food that you put into your body. And you already, I mean, you intuitively knew that, food is really important. It's not like you were eating McDonald's 3 times a day.
Right.
And so it's even at a very healthy, well-rounded person, diet for one person, and a very healthy adult, there can be some things that really make a huge difference in the way you feel, in the way you digest. And I think that's really important because a lot of people might feel, well, we're all on different spectrums, right? We're not really sure where to start. And then there's people that have a quote healthy diet that they feel like pretty much getting a lot of vitamins and minerals and protein and the things that they need. And then they're still not feeling great. So there's still some tweaking that could be done. And then where did that lead you from there?
So from there, I actually started to create more recipes that were healthy and tasted good, which is, of course, the most important thing for my family. And I ended up having people asking me how to make these recipes because they saw it online or they tried it when they were at my house. And so I thought at the time, my big dream was having a blog, like a recipe blog, and being able to share my recipes with people. So I started that blog, and it's actually the 4-year anniversary, a little bit past that now.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So it started with the nourishwithrenata.com blog. And so I really started to share recipes with people, which I love doing. I just think it's the most tangible way that we can really show people how being healthy doesn't mean you have to eat like super boring or bland foods. It's really about like, how can we get creative? How can we get inventive with the foods that we eat to help them to taste really good, but know that they're really good for our bodies too? And then from there, yeah. And then from there, really, it started to progress into nutrition coaching. So I was, honestly, it was during COVID that things really turned around for me in terms of moving more to nutrition coaching. Because I remember a friend of mine who's also a mom. And I mean, you remember during COVID, especially in the early months of it, where like many moms are at home, not just like looking after their entire family, but they're also homeschooling. They're also doing all the laundry, cleaning all the surfaces, wiping down all the groceries. I mean, it was like a constant barrage of things that we had to do for the sake of our family's health. And I remember this friend of mine coming to me, and it had been a hard road for her family. Her mother lived with her. They had a new pet during COVID. So it was literally all these things compounding. And she said to me something that I will never forget. And that is, you know, with everything going on in COVID, I've just forgotten how to look after myself. And that was a really pivotal moment for me because it showed me that food is self-care. Food is how we can truly look after ourselves from the inside out. And it can also become like this ritual, this sacred opportunity to really offer ourselves something that can heal us. So that's how I started going into more of the nutrition coaching side. And it started off with meal plans, like in the first book that you showed. It started off with really, really tangible ways. But the more that I stay in this field and the more that I meet with more and more women, I understand now that there are things that we hold on to from childhood, from other experiences with people or with food or our bodies that can really cause us to not reach those particular health goals because we are so impacted by the emotional and the mental sides of food and how we relate to food and our bodies.
So give us an example of that, of the all of the clients that you see and the women that you're helping, a relationship with food that has caused them not to be able to feel good or not to reach their goal. Give us an example. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so I had a client earlier this year, and she came to me, and one of the things that she really wanted to do was one, have a better relationship with food in terms of not feeling like she had to overindulge a lot. So sometimes this happens to everybody. Sometimes we're like, oh, I'm just going to eat a little bit more. Or I'm going to have more sweets, or I'm going to have more junk food. And then we end up starting this habit where we feel like we have to have it all the time. Or to the worst case, it could be like we feel like we have to have it, but also hide it from other people.
You
And
feel
so,
shame.
yes, so much shame, so much guilt. Sometimes it can even go into almost like a depressive state because we're just like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I keep doing it for that little moment that'll help me to feel better. But ultimately, I just feel worse about myself afterwards. So when I started kind of diving into her, and I call it the nutrition mindset, it's how our mind has been formed around our relationship with food. I started to understand that many of these characteristics of fighting sweets or wanting to overindulge actually stemmed from her relationship with her mother as a child.
Mhm.
So she had found that her mother actually had a lot of body negativity within herself, which then became something that she displayed to her daughter through, judging what she was eating, trying to control the amounts, the types of foods that she was consuming, which then led her daughter, which was my client, to wanting to hide food so that she could secretly eat and to feel some level of comfort that she wasn't necessarily getting from the relationship at that time with her mother. So once we dived into that work, which it is work, it's a lot of emotional baggage to unpack. It was really about seeing the connection between these two examples of a childhood memory that has had a great impact on her up until today, and seeing how it was playing out in the action she was taking today, because she was overindulging and overeating in things that she knew mentally were not serving her. So it's really an interesting dynamic that we have between the relationship with food as a child or with our parental figures, and how potentially that can carry itself through into today.
Well, I can really relate to that because I have 10 brothers and sisters, as you know, and it took me a long time to learn that within myself, how that relationship. And it stems from, I always joke about everybody who has a big family has an eating disorder. And this is why, because unless you're from a super, super, super wealthy family that has 12 kids or 11 kids, there's not a whole lot of food or money going around. There's nothing extra. There's more month at the end of the money, as they say. And I remember distinctly, it's basically whenever there were a grocery, was there a grocery delivery day? Of course, there was no delivery, but you know what I mean? When we got to go to the grocery store with mom, we had food. It was going to be a very short amount of time. So for us, it was like, you better grab it now because it's going to be gone. Everything you see here is going to be gone soon. So you better scarf everything you can fit in your pie hole And because that's it. So it was a scarcity mindset. Like it's not going to be, I'm going to not have anything if I don't eat it all right this second. It's going to be gone. And so, yeah, it is work. I've had to work really hard at that's not true. I have all the food in the whole world. You've seen my pantry, it's like this, it's ridiculous. But that's how that's how I calm down. There's no shortage. There's no scarcity. There's no reason to panic. There's nothing that's no 10 other kids are not going to take all the food on the table. And so I love that you're working from the inside and from your relationship with food itself. My question is, you brought up sugary sweets and the shame and the things that we are ashamed of, or the things that we have a tendency to hide. It tends to be sugar. And so my question is, I used to be able to eat a whole pan of brownies when I was in college, I mean, in 5 seconds, no problem. I lived off of Coke, it was Dr. Pepper at the time. Then, I mean, I've gone through, every binge and stage you can have with eating and unhealthy eating, you could possibly have, over the last almost 50 years now. My question is, how much of it is actually emotional and how much is it the chemicals in the food that you're actually putting in your brain and in your body? Has to be both, right?
It is absolutely both. And I love that you asked that question, because this is something that I feel like we all need to know about. That's not necessarily taught, but it is so profound once you understand the science or like the chemical interactions. So let's say that you've had like a really crappy day. Like you got up in the morning late, you overslept, you had to like rush to get to work. There was traffic, someone cut you off in traffic. The whole workday went terrible. Like your boss was a jerk. You end up coming home, you have no food in the house, and it's just been like one of those days. Okay. So what might you do if you're like feeling really crappy? You might reach for some ice cream, let's say. So you go to the freezer, you get some ice cream, and one of the main components of any like carbohydrate-rich food, such as ice cream or cookies or cake or pie, is sugar, right? And so we know that with traditional sugar, what happens is that it directly affects your blood sugar level. So it's going to go into your bloodstream and it's going to start to increase your blood sugar level pretty rapidly, depending on the amount or the type of sugar that you're using. And so when this happens, when your blood sugar level increases, it helps you to feel better. It's raising your energy, it's raising your blood sugar level. So you feel like, oh, okay, like I can deal with the world again. I have energy, I can do this. Amazing. So this is your body's natural response to trying to lift your energy, trying to lift your mood, right? So there's almost like this survival mechanism that's occurring in the body that makes you want to do that, especially when you're having a really tough or challenging day. So what happens after this blood sugar level peaks? Well, then insulin gets pumped out of your pancreas, and it's going to cause that blood sugar level to drop rapidly as well, which is when we get that blood sugar crash, which is when we feel really crappy, right? We once again have no energy. We once again are like really low mood, really feeling really down about ourselves. And so what would you do? You'd probably reach for something else that's going to help you to feel better, such as more refined sugars. And so it starts this, what I call sugar roller coaster or blood sugar roller coaster, so that you are constantly searching for what's the equivalent of the next high, right? That's why they call sugar a drug, because it really is like you're searching for the next way that you can help yourself to feel better. So to answer your question, part of it is absolutely emotional, because we're trying to help ourselves to feel better. And then part of it is, the food itself causing almost like this habitual reaction to occur every time our blood sugar level drops as well. So it's both science, it's both physiological, and it's emotional.
And emotional. Yeah. I had definitely struggled with a sugar addiction for my whole life. I think about it like as a society, we're constantly using sugar as a reward as well. I mean, how many times did, if my kids, me personally, we have anything, we don't usually have any, thing yummy or anything sugary in our house as a kid, except for when we did, it was a special occasion. We got to go out for ice cream, or we got to make cookies, or it was Halloween, right? And so we would hoard all of that stuff so I could keep the candy make it last as long as possible. And And then even being an adult and having children, I find myself in the same pattern. If we have a really good week and my kids, didn't get in trouble they got good remarks, good grade, whatever, you have a really good week. It's on Friday. That was a special day. We'd go get the the Frappuccino chocolate whatever thing is from Starbucks, or we'd go get ice cream. It was always a treat. And even when I was homeschooling, I was giving we'd play games with Starburst, and just constantly, it's the fun treat. You always get a treat for something, but it's always sugar, at least for me, until I realized, what sugar was doing to me and what it really is an addiction, because I was just waiting for the next sugar hit, whatever it was, even if it was a week, even if it's only going to be Friday nights or whatever it is. I used to do that. So we'd eat super healthy. And then Friday we'd order pizza and we'd get cupcakes and we'd have a pizza party. And it was like, yay, it's Friday. Let's celebrate. Let's celebrate with food, with not nourishing, delicious food that's going to make you full and happy and feel good, just sugar and empty carbs. Flour is basically the same thing. And flour, correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically digested and metabolized just like white sugar, right? White flour, basically of any kind. I mean, I think wheat is the worst because it's so genetically modified, but your body processes it basically the same. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically another carbohydrate, right?
Yeah.
And so the body is going to process it in a similar way.
Yeah. Processed carbohydrates, because
Right.
vegetables are carbohydrates as well, right?
Also, yeah.
So my question is, if someone is struggling from the ups and downs, the emotional eating or, drinking, I think the sugar content in alcohol is one of the reasons why it's so addicting. And would you agree? Because as soon as you said you had a long shitty day and you're like, everything went wrong and your boss is a jerk, and what are you going to reach for? I'm like, wine.
Yeah. Delicious wine. Yeah.
It's the same. It's basically the same thing. Ice cream, wine. I mean, is it because of the sugar content, do you think?
I think part of it is definitely the sugar content. And the other part is that, so this is kind of going back a little bit more in regards to like society. So oftentimes with alcohol consumption, there's a lot of societal influence into it. And so if you think about like when you were first introduced to alcohol, then perhaps it was, a time when it was kind of naughty. It was kind of like hanging out with your friends. It was a little bit like risky. And it was this way of having a social connection as well as having a release from like the responsibilities of the day. So I think part of it is the actual chemical composition of the alcohol. Of course, it's going to have some sugars in it. It's going to have obviously the alcohol, which helps to relax you. And it also has this societal component in it as well. Like it helps to kind of make you feel like you're part of a group. So I think alcohol for me is a really interesting thing to look at, especially if you find that, for instance, during the holiday season that you tend to drink more, or if it's in regards to emotional eating. I always question, like, what is the emotion behind the reason I want to do it? Because with the example previously, it was, I was frustrated, I was stressed out, et cetera, et cetera. Those are real emotions. And what we're doing sometimes with emotional eating or with drinking, especially when it's to excess of either of those things, it is a way of almost masking those feelings so we don't have to deal with them. We're just trying to like put something on top of them so we don't actually confront them to the fullest extent.
I totally agree. And I didn't even think we were going to go this way today, but I'm really glad we are, because I think this is a problem for almost everybody. I think that in some way, it might not be a pan of brownies. I think everybody listening can relate to, I feel a feeling that's uncomfortable, and it could be frustration. It could be anger. It could have had an argument with somebody, and it almost is like we're reaching for, I need something. I must have something exterior, no matter what it is. It could be Netflix or, it could be food. Food is a very common one because it's everywhere in front of us all the time. And every other ad is for junk food if you watch TV, which I'm glad I don't usually see those. can't remember where I was when I saw some TV ads. I was watching something live. Oh, it was golf, because John sometimes watched golf tournaments live. So I think it's the only thing we watch that's live. I was like, oh man, every single commercial, every one of them is either drugs or food. So it's either junk food or, packaged food, or it's the drug companies for help you with the symptoms that food created. Right. So my question is, what do you do instead? Right. So we all have triggers, a trigger that can cause us to do something that would not be necessarily best for us to do. Eat brownies, or there's nothing wrong with eating a brownie, by the way. You know what I mean? When we are eating or filling or drinking or consuming or deadening of some sort, or, watching Netflix, we're doing something that we know is a form of self-sabotage. We know it's not necessarily great for us. We're not going to feel better afterwards. We're only going to feel better for a second. How do you break that cycle? How do you break that habit? And what are some tips that you can give us when we do feel frustrated and we do feel stressed out? It is the holidays right now, and Christmas is coming up, and Hanukkah, and parties, and people are sending us, chocolates and donuts 24/7. Candy is everywhere. Alcohol is everywhere. What are some things that we can do? What are some steps we can take?
Yeah, this is an amazing question. So the first step for me is always to ask the question of, what is the emotion that I'm trying not to feel right now? So, just like a little tiny question that you can start off with. I'll give you 5 minutes to answer it. No, but really, we have to ask these questions of ourselves if we want life to be different, right? So if you're noticing that you are in an unhealthy way, for instance, if you are overeating, if you are over drinking, if you are sabotaging relationships with emotional outbursts, let's say, then the question is, what emotion am I trying not to feel right now? And be really honest with yourself. And this is not to say that the emotions that anybody feels at any time is good, bad, right, or wrong. We have to allow ourselves to feel them. And I think one of the things in this society, and I'm not saying everyone does it, but it is a common thread that I see, is that we use things to mask our feelings. We use things to stop ourselves from being real and honest and authentic with ourselves. And so really, that's the first step. It's this idea of awareness. When you know the emotion that you're trying to confront, the other step is let yourself feel it. So just like I said, so you've identified what it is. Now let yourself feel it. And you can feel it in lots of different ways. It might cause you to cry. It might cause you to be angry. It might cause you to be all these other things. But let yourself feel it, because as you and I both know, when we allow ourselves to feel the fullest extent of that emotion, then it will disappear in like a minute to 90 seconds. Like, it actually doesn't need to linger in the body and cause us to have like these long drawn out years of us trying to figure out many, many things, because we just let ourselves feel it in the moment that it occurs. So let yourself feel it. Let yourself cry. Let yourself laugh. Let yourself, talk to someone, because really that's the third step, is releasing it. So the release could be the tears. It could be the talking. It could be the, journaling it out, which is another really powerful way of dealing with emotions that you might be holding on to. Let yourself release it in a way that makes sense for you. So if you don't like talking to people, maybe journaling is the answer. Or maybe you love writing, and so journaling would be the answer. Or maybe you don't want to talk to your family about it, and maybe finding a therapist or a counselor would be helpful. There's lots of options out there. And for me, it always comes back to being honest and real about the feelings that we have, because when we can release them, then we can breathe a sigh of release, and we won't feel the need to have to go to food, sugar, alcohol, drugs, sex, etc., to try to fill a void, because we filled it with the love that we have for ourselves.
Oh, I love that so much. I think that is really what we need, so drastically right now, especially at the season, the craziest month of all of our lives is December. And a lot of us have a hard time feeling the feelings, and we have a hard time expressing feelings, and then we deny ourselves feelings. because we're supposed to not make waves. We're supposed to, take care of everybody and be good and help everybody else and organize all of the things and do billions of the things every day. Right. And just to give yourself that moment to say, I want to reach for X, whatever it is, because why? Why is that? And then identify the feeling that you're trying to not feel. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. So if you're really starting out if someone's out there thinking, I really want to feel better, I'm not going to diet, screw diets. I've tried 97 diets. I can't even find what I should eat. Intermittent fasting, should I be counting my macros? Should I be, what the heck? There's 5 billion websites about how to get healthy. And I think we have information overload. And I would like for you to give us your best, what is the best way to start? Where do you start? You really want to make changes. You said it earlier, if you have to feel your feelings, and if you want anything to be different. So if you don't want anything to be different, then that's fine. Just keep doing what you're doing, right? If you really want to be different, you want to feel different, you want to show up differently, you want to have more energy for your family, for yourself. And I love that food truly is self-care, and it's giving yourself nourishment. What would you say to people? Where do you start?
So for me, and this is not going to be a tangible answer, and I feel like so many people are like, okay, just tell me what to eat, how much to eat. Like, this is not going to be a tangible answer. My recommendation, and really my invitation for anyone that is starting out on their health journey, is to start shifting the way that they see food. So we've talked about it already. Food can be such a source of guilt or shame or defeat. It can have a tie-in to so many negative emotions. And when we relate to food in that way, what happens? We feel like we become those things, that we are shame, that we are guilt, that we are a host of negative things that we think and feel about ourselves. So what I recommend and what I invite you to do if you are feeling this way is to start shifting how you're looking at food. And just like my experience in my journey, what if I looked at food as if it is the ultimate form of self-care? What if it is that sacred offering that I can give myself 3 times a day, 5 times a day, whatever the case may be, where I'm honoring my hunger cues, where I'm honoring my fullness cues, where I'm feeding myself like how I would feed my child or my spouse or my sister or my mother? How would my plate be different if I treated myself with that amazing, tender love and care? And so shifting this mindset about how we relate to food and looking at it as this amazing way to look after ourselves changes everything. It changes not just what you put on your plate, it changes how kindly you speak to yourself. It changes how much you take a break during the day, how much grace you give yourself. It allows you to pause before reacting and have a really thoughtful and mindful response to things. It has an impact on all areas of your life. And so allowing yourself to start shifting that perspective is, for me, the most beautiful way to start, because it has such a ripple effect into everything else in life.
That is so beautiful. Thank you. I never thought of it that way. How would I build my own plate if I was serving my loved ones, the ones that I want to be healthy, the ones that I want to live forever? I want to be, running around with their grandchildren someday, my children, my mom. What would I feed her? What would I prepare with love to keep her healthy and to keep her with me for longer? That does change everything. I love just even thinking of it that way. And we have come so far from that because, 100 years ago, that's what food was. It was work. You had to work very hard to get the food, and you had to prepare it all yourself. There was nothing on a shelf in a box. And that's how we displayed love to the people that we love. That's how my granny cooked. She cooked for us, that because she loved us, and she did make cookies, but she made them with spelt flour because she was celiac disease, and she would make them, cook for weeks before we'd come by, because everybody would come by. And her brisket and everything was prepared meticulously by hand in her kitchen with love. And I think the faster we can get back to treating food just like you said it used to be a sacred thing. The meal was sacred, the family time was sacred, serving it was sacred. I think the better we all will be, all of us. And I love that. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. How can people find you?
Okay, well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I've loved this conversation. It's so powerful. So people can get in touch with me on my website, which is nourishwithrenata.com. There is a form there where you can get a free 20-minute consultation with me. And I would love to speak to everybody that listens to this, because I think that there's so much healing that can happen in the world when we really shift how we're looking at food and our bodies. You can also contact me through my Instagram, which is at nourish_with_Renata. And my Facebook group is called Get Nourished with Renata, where we have some amazing daily tips and challenges in there to help you to realize your healthy goals and where you want to be in your life.
Yeah, I love that. And I encourage everybody to do the 20-minute consultation, because I have worked personally with Renata. She's been my coach, and she's really helped me with my relationship with food and heal my body, and I've donated a few pounds to the universe at her last challenge. So if that's someone, I don't like to say losing weight, because you're just going to find it again. And I really love the whole holistic view and strategy for healing your body and your mind and your spirit. Make sure you go to Amazon. Both of her books are there: the Heal Your Body, Mind, and Spirit, and the cookbook, 30 days of recipes, literally every meal for 30 days, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, with the shopping guide, the shopping list. So she makes it so easy for you, because a lot of times we get overwhelmed with preparing and shopping, and just preparing meals for a whole week for a whole family can be really overwhelming. She takes it down super simple. Here's your list. This is what you shop. Go order it on on Instacart. Make it simple. That's, I think, the best thing about Renata is that she takes things that seem complicated, just take them down, simplify it one step at a time, one meal at a time. And she also has a meal prep video course as well. Easy meal prep for all of us who get overwhelmed with prepping meals. She makes it easy. So thank you so much, Renata, for being with us today and sharing your wisdom and love. And I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I love you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here on Create Today podcast. I'll leave all of Renata's deets in the little notes and the footnotes, and I'll share them everywhere so you can follow her. And I wish you a very healthy, amazing, wonderful holiday season, since we're here in December, and wishing you all lots of love.